Welcome back to the channel. Haven't we got a good video for you today? What do you mean? They're all good. Oh, stop it, you're making me blush. Anyway, let's get to the video, shall we? If you're a fan of conspiracy theories and modern art, which let's face it, looks like it was done by a 3-year-old half the time, then haven't we got the video for you? Strap on, in. It's going to be a bumpy ride, or maybe just a mildly interesting one. But either way, I hope you enjoy the video. So the question of the video is, did the CIA secretly fund modern art? It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but as they say, truth is stranger than fiction. Is that actually true though? Is the idea that the CIA secretly funded modern art that surprising? Are we really going to say that's stranger than a book-turn series, where people, dragons and the undead fight an apocalyptic war and a vie for power only for a little boy who refers to himself as a raven, ruling the Seven Kingdoms from his wheelchair? You be the judge. Modern art's a pretty loose term. We're talking in particular about abstract expressionism, a mid-20th century artistic movement that came from the unkempt corners of America, appearing like a new kid on the block with a point to prove.
Hey, Mr. Picasso, you ain't so tough. I ain't afraid of ya. Why I oughta?
Oh god, the impressions are back apparently. After centuries of European domination in the arts, the Americans wanted to finally get one over the Europeans, showing they weren't just powerful in terms of money and military, but creatively as well. And it was felt in some circles that the only way they could do this was by breaking free from conformity and traditions. You know, bold, wild, expressive, casting away the shackles of the past, breaking the rules and rewriting them with a splatter, all that good stuff. Or they just couldn't be bothered painting anything good. And in typical American fashion, they had vision in one hand and a sledgehammer in the other, and the old world was shattered piece by piece, breaking the traditions of a bygone era. Artists like Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, Willem de Kooning created chaotic yet somehow emotional works. Their art rejected structure and tradition. Well, I think that's pretty clear by looking at them. It was kind of out with the old and in with the new, a moment that meant the world of art would never be the same again. This had a knock-on effect. New York was slowly becoming the centre of the art world, a position that Paris had enjoyed for over a century at this point. The cultural axis of the world was shifting, and someone noticed. Someone unexpected. Oh dear, that's taken a turn, hasn't it? It's very ominous. I'm getting right frightened, I am.
Oh, I'm terrified, Barbara. I can't watch it. I can't do it.
Jesus. What if the success of this artistic movement wasn't entirely organic? What if behind the canvas and the tortured brushstrokes was something a little shadier? Enter the CIA. It's the mid-20th century. It's always enter the CIA. What did you expect? America's favourite shadowy uncle, the one you try and avoid at all costs at a family gathering. I jest. About my uncle, not the CIA part. Because here's the thing. Did the US government, through the CIA, play a covert role in making abstract expressionism a global phenomenon? Yeah. How else could you convince the world that a bit of splattered paint on a canvas was a masterpiece? It's like Fisher-Price's My First Painting, for goodness sake. Again, I jest. But the point is, could it be that art, which is supposed to be this personal and political statement, often at the expense of the government, was unknowingly driven by covert actors and used as a weapon of the state in the Cold War? Although the focus of the Cold War is often on nuclear threats and military build-up and spies, which is all legitimate, it was also a clash of ideology, a battle for the hearts and minds around the world, or at least that's how they saw it, and the CIA played a major role in shaping global culture, whether through literature, music or art. One of the key movers behind this whole thing was the Congress for Cultural Freedom, an organisation that, surprise surprise, was secretly funded by the CIA. It was basically a cultural front, designed to push American ideals through exhibitions, concerts, magazines, and anything that looked classy enough to pass as soft power. The goal was simple: beat those commie. But America knew that their fear of the spread of communism didn't begin and end at gunpoint, but was something that could seep into society through less obvious means, as we saw with things like McCarthyism and the Red Scare, for example. It didn't always go as planned though. God, it sounds like we're doing a video on Britain. In 1947, the State Department funded and organised a touring exhibition to counter the Soviet claims that America was a cultural desert, more associated with baseball and burgers than they were with ballet and the opera. This should have been a great success. with the travelling exhibition going to most of Europe's major cities. But ironically, where it wasn't too popular was with America's own President Truman, and also in Congress, with a congressman stating,
"I'm just a dumb American who pays taxes for this kind of trash."
Have no idea if he sounded like that, but we'll pretend he did. I guess neither of them got the memo.
It was part of a secret operation to defeat the spread of communism.
Anyway, other institutions like the Museum of Modern Art were in on it too, championing American ideals under the guise of promoting art. And then there was the propaganda assets inventory. Ooh, sounds a little Orwellian, doesn't it? To be fair, it was just a fancy name for a network of friendly journalists, editors and media outlets that the CIA had been quietly creating since 1947. Anyway, all of this was done to steer the global opinion away from Soviet ideology. So the CIA was less like a deep state Illuminati and more like a mid-century gossip girl. But through this setup, abstract expressionism was cast as wild, rebellious, uniquely American, a total contrast to the rigid realism of the Soviet Union, where paintings depicted industry, agriculture and workers. Even British galleries weren't immune to the claws of the CIA.
Oh, I say. Hey you, let us put some of our art in your gallery.
I'm terribly sorry, but our gallery is full at the moment.
Maybe some of these Benjamins will change your mind.
Art, you say? Yes, come right this way. Yeah, so money talks, and London's galleries were strapped for cash in the austere post-war, making it notably easier for the CIA to get these American artworks into the galleries. But even so, the CIA were very crafty in the way they did it. A good example of this is when the Tate Gallery in London were unable to put an exhibition on to showcase abstract expressionism because they were short on cash. Luckily for them, the Fairfield Foundation stepped in and said,
"We'll cover the costs."
The Tate happily accepted, but little did they know, the Fairfield Foundation was being funded by none other than the CIA. So an act that seemed generous and in the name of the arts had a secret political angle to it. But it wasn't just art. The CIA were infiltrating literature as well. They funded literary journals like Encounter and helped distribute works by anti-communist writers like George Orwell and Boris Pasternak, and even got behind the global promotion of Dr. Zhivago, a novel banned in the Soviet Union. All of it part of the same game. Show the world that freedom, not control, breeds the best ideas. There's a little hint of irony in all this, but you get the point. And in the world of art, abstract expressionism was seen as the ultimate representation of Western freedom. But interestingly, though we're talking about this in the context of the Cold War, the relationship between modern art and American diplomacy found its origins during the Second World War. How did the CIA do this, you may ask? They weren't in the business of meeting artists in dark alleyways and giving them loads of cash and then saying,
"Hey you, go and paint one of your fancy squiggly things and promote American freedom, alright?"
Yeah, it just wasn't like that. They were far more subtle, operating in the shadows. So yeah, as said, the relationship between modern art and American diplomacy began during World War II, when the Museum of Modern Art was mobilised for the war effort. The MoMA was founded in 1929 by Abby Aldrich Rockefeller, and a decade later, her son Nelson became the president. He was also the heir to Standard Oil, a walking trust fund who also referred to the MoMA as Mummy's Museum. Talk about mummy issues. And he was one of the biggest champions and backers of abstract expressionism. He referred to it as free enterprise painting. And if that doesn't sum up the American worldview, I don't know what else does. So the gallery aggressively promoted the movement, organising international exhibitions and ensuring that these works were seen across Europe and beyond. And behind the scenes, CIA money was flowing into these projects. And to put this clandestine operation beyond doubt, former CIA officers have later admitted to actively promoting abstract expressionism as part of a cultural strategy. Because the days of ideological wars being fought solely in speeches and manifestos and wars was over, as the CIA saw as much, if not more value, promoting America from the stage and the canvas, with former CIA official Tom Braden going as far to say the Boston Symphony Orchestra won more acclaim for the United States and Paris than President Eisenhower giving 100 speeches. I wouldn't want to tell him that to his face. No, President Eisenhower, you're not giving a speech anymore. Go and grab that violin. We've got a performance of Mary Had a Little Lamb in 5 minutes. That'll show the communists. So whilst artists like Pollock and Rothko and de Kooning saw themselves as outsiders or rebels against the system, they were in reality a cultural arm of the United States, with their work being quietly used as a tool of propaganda. But did they know? Did they have any idea that their art was being used in such a way that instead of being outsiders, in many ways, they were working for the establishment? Most of these artists had no idea their work was being used in this way. To their knowledge, they were operating on the fringes of society, away from the mainstream. And they weren't what you'd say overly patriotic either. Pollock once said he was called a rotten rebel from Russia, and Rothko flat out described himself as an anarchist. They were critical of US politics and sceptical of capitalism. I'm pretty sure they were happy with the money they were making though. Not exactly the ideal poster boys for American democracy, now were they? Just imagine being Jackson Pollock. You're in your barn, smooth jazz playing in the background, you're flinging your paint around, thinking you're tapping into pure emotion. And meanwhile, your work is part of a covert Cold War PR campaign. I think that would have caused quite the existential crisis, wouldn't you? But the thing is, by the time this began coming to public light in the 1990s, most of the key figures of the movement were already dead, including Pollock and Rothko. De Kooning was still alive, but he was in his 90s at this point, but there's no public record of him commenting on this, if he was even aware of it. But this leads into a nice question. Did the CIA's involvement in modern art make things like abstract expressionism less authentic? Many would argue that government influence pollutes artistic integrity. After all, isn't art supposed to be free and independent? If a movement is secretly propped up by a government agency, does that mean it wasn't real in the first place? However, it's clear that abstract expressionism was already a groundbreaking movement in its own right. It was just given a friendly boost from unexpected allies. Whether or not the CIA intervened from the shadows, those artists were already shaping the future of modern art. And let's not forget, it was the CIA who saw value in the movement, not the movement who saw value in the CIA. It's kind of like a chicken and egg argument. At the end of the day, the paintings themselves didn't change. They weren't being told what to do. Pollock's chaotic drips and Rothko's haunting colour fields, those still stand on their own. But the story behind them, that just adds another layer of intrigue and complexity. And if art is all about interpretation, were the CIA not just interpreting it in their own way? Albeit in a more shadowy, underhand practical way, but anyway, the point still stands. Whilst others saw these works as random and pretentious and silly, including the president himself, the CIA saw them as golden representations of American freedom in the face of the Soviet threat. And the CIA weren't telling the painters themselves what they needed to paint or what they shouldn't be painting. It wasn't like that. As the former member of the CIA, Thomas Braden, said, he wanted to unite all the artists and creatives and writers to show that America and the West were devoted to creative freedom without rigid barriers. And he also made an interesting defense to their involvement, saying that it takes a pope or someone with a lot of money to recognize art and support it. And after many centuries, people say, oh look, the Sistine Chapel, the most beautiful creation on earth. And this highlights the subtlety, the nuance, and the dynamic between the benefactors and the artists themselves, whatever their motivations may be. And this is something that has run through the entire course of art history. Abstract expressionism didn't just change art, it rewrote the rules, man. It rewrote the rules, it broke with tradition and shattered the norms, and made it so that subconsciousness, chaos, and raw emotion could take centre stage on the canvas. And it also showed that America wasn't just this political military power, it was a cultural one as well. And this is reflected by New York becoming the new capital of the art world. We went from the stuffy old art galleries of Europe with people saying, no, you are smelly, you would not understand the art, you are not allowed in. Is that French? Is that a human accent? But anyway, we went from that into
Step right up! Art for $1, a squiggly painting that your kid could do. Step right up is the wonder of the world. Ain't it great being in New York, the Big Apple?
Is that worse than the French accent? Probably. Moving on swiftly, but its unexpected ties to Cold War politics opens a far more unsettling question about things like art and propaganda, soft power, and the invisible hands that shape global culture. The fact that the CIA covertly propped up this movement without the artist's knowledge forces us to wonder, what else was co-opted during the Cold War? How much of what we call organic culture was actually a battlefield in a war of influence we never saw? Was the avant-garde truly rebellious, or was it just another tool in a geopolitical chess game? And yet here's the twist. None of it makes the paintings any less powerful. Pollock's raw energy, Rothko's glowing voids, de Kooning's frantic smears, they still hit. Because even if the government funded it, they couldn't fake that level of expression. Maybe it just proves that art and politics are never truly separate. One reflects the other, whether we like it or not. By the late 1960s, abstract expressionism had lost its edge. It started to feel like yesterday's rebellion. Pop art, minimalism and conceptualism took over, more iconic, more polished and definitely more media savvy. The messy sincerity of the abstract expressionist painters didn't quite fit in a world of Andy Warhol's soup cans or Donald Judd's boxes, and maybe once The Secret was out, the magic had just worn off. So what do you think? Does the CIA's hidden involvement behind abstract expressionism tarnish its legacy? Or is all art, in some way, shaped by the tides of politics and history? Let me know in the comments what you think. Deary me, that video was a little highbrow at times. Maybe we'll do something a little sillier for next video, a little bit more off the cuff, let's say. But anyway, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and if you're even more excited for the next one as we are, goodbye!